Alrighty, yo, what is going on, everybody? It's your boy, Mr. DDG94, back with another reaction video. Today, I'm going to react to Get Out Tried to Warn You. Without further ado, let's get right into it. Get Out didn't have to warn me about shit. I know right then and there, don't never go to no white woman house with their family and they out in the middle of the fucking woods. You know that's a no-no. Come on, black people, y'all know better than that. Ain't no pussy worth going to the middle of the woods with white people. You know you ain't coming back from that. Getting hanged on the tree
Get
right
Out is
there.
a masterpiece. It is by far one of the most memorable films I've seen in recent years. Of course, there is a racial component to this movie. They were chasing after black people for their bodies, claiming they would make fine vessels for the old, sick, and dying white folks. But did you also get all the deep hidden messages that were literally screaming right in front of your face? There is so much depth to this movie, depth that's worth exploring. Let's take a deep dive and see what you might have missed.
That's right. There's a whole parallel between the deer and Chris, and of course Chris's mother, the suppressed memory of his mother dying after being hit by the car. The buck, of course, is the animal that Chris uses in the end to kill Dean, the patriarch of the Armitage family.
Get Out is a psychological horror film written, directed, and co-produced by Jordan Peele. And Peele loves to hide a couple of Easter eggs in his work.
That's right. That's what we call a little Easter egg for the Kubrick fans.
When you watch this film a couple of times, you can dissect and examine every little hidden message that shouldn't be overlooked. And with this film, it has a lot to do with people's fake faces. Sometimes, it's easy to tell why people don't like you. At other times, you have no clue why. The question is, can you trust the people who do like you? Do they accept you with all your flaws and imperfections? Or do they have an ulterior motive for being your friend? Well, this movie uses horror and an eerie plot to explore the themes of race relations in the United States. It focuses on the tension between the black and white communities and how it can all hide well behind a facade of friendliness. In Chris's case, it simmers under the disguise of true love. Here are some of the hidden messages in Get Out. One of the many reasons why this movie is so satisfying is that Chris actually behaves intelligently throughout the entire film. He doesn't just go into a fit of panic and run like a mindless zombie. He is observant, relatable, and rational. He tries to brush off the first couple of things so as to not be disrespectful to Rose or get too weird in front of her parents. But when things start going south, he says, "Yeah, I want to go home, babe. Can we go?" The first sign is the Sikiliza, the opening song. It starts to play in the first few minutes of the film and proceeds to play a couple of times throughout the movie. This song is a literal warning to Chris, telling him to run and save himself. One instance is during the party scene when Chris is talking about his experience being an African American. The song also plays when Chris looks at the mounted deer head. The voices in the song are the voices we carry, the voices of our community, history books, and our ancestors. They are a haunting reminder of how important it is to stay attuned and awake to the ways of white supremacy and all that is around us. At the beginning of the movie, when Chris and Rose are driving to Rose's parents' house, Chris calls Rod, his best friend. He puts Rod on speakerphone, and Rod says to Rose that she picked the wrong guy, jokingly implying that she should have chosen him as a boyfriend instead of Chris. Later in the movie, we find out that Rose's family is kidnapping black people to place the consciousness and brains of white cult members into the bodies of healthy black individuals. This is to prolong their lifespan. Rose probably knew Rod before she knew Chris, and the reason she picked Chris instead of Rod is that he had a healthy body, excellent eyesight, and skills as a photographer. She was sent to seduce high-value targets that the family could auction for good money. Oh, and by the way, an auction is an allegory for the slave trade. Before the Civil War, slaves were often sold at auctions. An auctioneer stood on a pedestal, and wealthy people assembled to bid on the preferred slave. By preparing to auction Chris off as a vessel to another man, the Armitages reveal themselves as those on top of the food chain, slave traders. Rod was lucky he didn't fit the profile. He was wearing glasses, emphasizing poor eyesight, and was slightly overweight. Yes, Rod was just teasing them. It is just part of his personality. But because he was super paranoid about Chris going to Rose's family home, it is clearly obvious that he felt something he couldn't quite explain. On the way to the Armitages' family home, Rose hits a deer. This is a pivotal moment that showcases a number of things. In classic symbolism, the deer is a sign of unwanted visitors being hunted. This is basically how Chris is perceived, as a deer to be hunted. The Armitage family hunts these visitors and keeps them as trophies to show off their dominance. But there is also something else. When the deer is hit, Chris goes immediately to check up on it, hoping that it would have died a quick death and wouldn't have to suffer. We see his eyes fill with pain as he is looking at the mortally wounded creature. Rose shows no empathy, no remorse. She uses excuses like, "I was disoriented," and continues to lightheartedly accept the advice of the policeman. These are one of the many symptoms of sociopathy that Rose actually displays. Later, when Chris meets the family, we see something interesting. As they are sitting on the back porch, Chris starts knocking on the table. This is a sign that he is very uncomfortable on a deep psychological level, and he is showing that comfort through common gestures. Now, the reason this is different is that he usually turns to cigarettes to deal with this stress. To please her parents, he subconsciously chooses another way to show his discomfort. Here, we also see Missy tapping on the glass with the spoon, which basically means she is marking her territory. The tapping of the spoon creates a focal point for hypnotism to work, even without Chris's permission. On that note, the silver spoon symbolizes white privilege, being born with a silver spoon. Another interesting thing that you probably missed is the subtle use of color to show alliance and conflict between characters. At the start of the film, Rose is wearing lots of blues. Blues associated with a sense of security while showing professionalism and loyalty. But then we see Rose's color scheme changing. It subtly shifts to red as a way to demonstrate Chris's isolation and vulnerability. This is the first time we see Rose wearing a different color, and she decides to change it when people start attending the party to bid on Chris. When wearing red, she represents the Republican ideology and becomes a danger to Chris, while Chris is still wearing blue, which makes him systematically excluded. Now, let's take a look at the color psychology of red. Many of the guests and the Armitages are also wearing some form of red, whether that's a handkerchief, tie, skirt, or shirt. This is the symbol of their secret society. Of course, red has a lot to do with blood, and by wearing it, they show that they don't mind spilling plenty of it to get exactly what they want. Because of its ability to grab people's attention, the color red is often associated with impending danger. Think fire engines, stop signs, sirens, red traffic lights, etc. Here is another thing you probably missed. Back when Rose was driving Chris to the family home, she was driving a red car. This suggests that Rose was taking Chris straight into danger. When Rose and Chris sit side by side in the big get-together, we can see that their clothing forms a direct image of the American flag. The couple now represents a visual personification of the racial divide. This says a lot about segregation and Chris's position as a black person in a white community. If you're enjoying this video so far, please leave a like on it and subscribe to the channel. It goes a long way in helping our message get pushed to more people. We aren't just telling stories, we're changing lives and waking the culture up. Now, let's get back into it. Another important warning in Get Out is the message of mind control, or the sunken state, as the antagonist would call it. With the help of hypnosis and neurosurgery, the Armitage family could move the consciousness of one person into another person's body. The sunken place represents Missy's full control over Chris.
Now, sink into the floor. Wait. Sink.
This hypnosis scene has a hidden emotional meaning for Chris. He is pulling some cotton from the chair as he struggles to deafen the hypnotic sound of the silver spoon. This is a clear sign of the struggles of African Americans throughout history. The cotton economy was what drove a high demand for slavery in the Deep South. People were being sold off in droves, creating the second biggest forced migration in America's history. The moment when Missy took over his mind is something we can also compare to today's celebrities. The MK Ultra conspiracy theory suggests that celebrities are under mind control. We can see many examples of celebrities staring into space with blank expressions, showing evidence of a glitch in their programming, like with Cardi B and her unexpected blank staring during the 2018 Grammy red carpet interview. During a 2017 press conference, Draymond Green also suddenly went blank and stayed that way for about 19 seconds.
With another knee. But at the end of the day, I have amazing teammates. Guys like Draymond.
That's a pretty long time to drift off when you're supposed to give a speech. But sports and music stars are not the only ones who are perceived to be victims of mind control. In 2006, a former astronaut, Hayden Marie Stephenson Piper, took part at a press conference in Houston, Texas, when she planned on revealing a UFO encounter she had in space. But she unexpectedly fainted and was unable to finish her statement. Because of this, people believe she was hypnotized. After Chris figures out the truth about the Armitage family, Rose is seen scouting on her laptop for her next victim. In this scene, she is eating Fruit Loop cereal and milk. The thing is, They are supposed to be mixed in a bowl and eaten together, except her actions are probably showcasing something more sinister because milk is white and Fruit Loops come in a bunch of colors. Serving them separately most likely symbolizes the segregation era, when people of color were expected to use different public amenities than white people. While Rose is eating her Fruit Loops, we see Chris taking Jeremy's car to try and escape. The moment he starts the engine, you can hear a chilling song called Run Rabbit Run playing on the radio. Now if you remember, in the first scene, when a man kidnaps Andre, this exact song plays in his vehicle. This proves that Jeremy was the one who kidnapped Andre. He is using the song as a way to show dominance to his victim. He enjoys the striking contrast of the eerie chord against the blood and gore. But there is more to this song than meets the eye. Symbolically, the rabbit represents black people being persecuted by the white race. Even on his first night, the Armitages slyly serve Chris a carrot cake. This means that Chris and the other black people they've captured are creatures meant to be consumed. There were many negative racial stereotypes that had an effect on how people viewed African Americans. These stereotypes were so engraved in society that they created a huge racial divide. Historically, black people were often compared to rabbits. For example, African American women were thought to feel little pain when giving birth, and bear cutting with nearly as much impunity as dogs and rabbits. Stereotypes such as these were used to rationalize the cruel and inhumane treatment of slaves. It's a shame that many such insane stereotypes still exist today. Even the deaths in the film were not simplistic. Dean Armitage was an evil surgeon and a liar. He disliked deer and stated that when someone has killed this animal, they've done service to mankind. Chris uses a deer statue to stab Dean in the throat while doing surgery. Missy Armitage hypnotizes her patients by looking into their eyes. Chris kills her by stabbing her in the eye in her office. Jeremy Armitage is a fan of jiu-jitsu. Chris outsmarts Jeremy with a clever move and crushes his skull. Rose Armitage is an excellent manipulator, sociopath, and good at betrayal. She is killed by her own victim in the form of betrayal. The movie has two endings. In the first one, Chris is saved by Rod. What's worth mentioning is the impact of the police vehicle as it's creeping in. You can see in this scene, Chris just gives up. Isn't it strange that whenever a cop car pulls over a black man covered in blood, you know that his life is over? These police lights don't invoke safety and reassurance. They invoke fear. When Rod comes out, this is the first time Chris feels actual relief. It would have been great if Chris lit up a cigarette in the end as Rod drove away. But just to be clear, we are in no way promoting cigarettes at all. He was just craving one the entire time he was in the Armitage home, and he never actually got the chance to smoke. Of course, they hypnotized him to stop smoking, but if he were to smoke one right now, it would be a symbolic closure that the psychological control the Armitage family had over him was over. This, to me, implies that any living victims might still be under Armitage's mind control, and who knows how many people they've kidnapped over the years. Rod says that this is being handled, but can Chris really walk free? Sure, the fire destroyed most of the evidence in the house, but it didn't destroy all of it. For example, the bodies of the groundskeeper, the house cleaner, and the woman in the driveway. These are all substantial pieces of evidence that do survive. Any crime scene investigator will figure out that the groundskeeper died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head. The gunshot residue on his hands will prove that he shot Rose, but Chris did try to strangle her, and his fingerprints are all over the murder weapon, Rose's neck, and the car, to say the least. An autopsy report should point out that all the black victims are, in fact, missing persons. Then we have the bidders at the party. When Rose and the Armitage family introduced Chris, they only used his first name. To them, Chris was just valuable stock, rather than a human being. Knowing his background, family, interests, or anything about his life would be meaningless. So the question is, can these elderly white people positively identify a black man if they only knew his first name? So, the FBI has its work cut out for them. The alternate ending is not so hopeful. Here, Chris goes to jail, probably for life. Rod is willing to fight for him and get him out, but Chris has no intention of fighting. He only implies that he stopped it. When Jordan Peele tested the ending, the audience loved Chris and they wanted him to win. Also, filmmakers believed that letting Chris win, they would send out a more powerful message. Hence, why Peele went for a positive ending. But when you take a look at this ending, you can clearly see the actual truth. The realities for black Americans are often not the same as for white people. The fundamental differences lie in the way black people are treated, in the misunderstandings, judgment, and bias, like how violence against black people is normalized. When we normalize racism and bigotry, we often dismiss the racism people are facing on a daily basis. The alternate ending focuses on exactly that, the brutal reality of what Chris is bound to face given his predicament. Since Black Americans are deemed more violent in our current society, you may not be surprised or outraged to see violent or strange things happen to Black people outside of their community. We can see this from the beginning to the very end of the movie, how Chris and Rod can't help but feel vulnerable when being surrounded by white people. The thing is, it's not uncommon to find Black people who've been roughed up by police at least once in their life. If it didn't happen to them, then it has definitely happened to some of their family members or friends. This happens to Black people all the time, and it is the norm. The movie is a great eye-opener. Haven't we all seen people in situations where we want to scream for them to get out, but it is never that easy. They've already fallen into the sunken place, unable to free themselves of the shackles of their own mind. We can observe a situation as an outsider, but when it is happening to us, it is very difficult to see a way out. What are your thoughts on the film? Are there any other hidden messages you want to point out? Share your thoughts in the comments. The video on the screen shares another story that will open your eyes and make you see.
Alrighty, that's just going about do it for this one. It definitely is a lot of hidden messages. That's why I say this: Get Out is one of the movies you just keep going back to, no matter how random it is. You keep going back to this movie because you try to get all the messages out of it. It's so much hidden shit. I ain't gonna lie, Jordan Peele was in his bag on this one. I ain't gonna lie to for the one time though. For the one time, I ain't gonna lie, Jordan Peele was in his bag on this one. I ain't gonna lie. This is definitely a movie you got to keep going back to, man. But anyway, so that's just going to about do it for this one. I'll see you on the next video. Till then, peace out.